Yeah.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm super excited about today's conversation. Tabitha Zappone, thank you so much for being here. I'm going to try to do a little bit of an introduction. I'm going to butcher it, but I think it's important that I paint a little bit of a picture of your background and why I'm so excited to kind of pick your brain and anyway, all of that stuff. So you're a nurse practitioner, you're a mother, you're a wife, you're a community leader, you're an entrepreneur, you're a small business owner, so many different hats that you wear. And I just got to share with you, it's been really fun. So for everybody listening, we've just recently started working together professionally, doing some marketing stuff. But through that process, had to have a series of, kind of longer form video meetings with you. And I've been so impressed with the passion that you bring for your business, but then also the expertise and like the thought that I can tell that there's so much intention and thoughtfulness behind why you do what you do, the way you do things, the way you run your practice, the way you handle your patients and all of that good stuff. So I'm just so excited to be able to honestly learn from you and pick your brain and all of that stuff. So where I'd love to start, if you're up for it, is if I understand correctly, you have a background before Alpine Medical in what I'll just call standard medicine. I don't know if that's the right word or not, but you were working for someone else before you started Alpine. Can you walk me through that story and a little bit of your background even before that, of how we got to where we are now with Alpine Medical and wearing the entrepreneur hat a little bit?
Oh, goodness. You really want that story?
Yes.
You can edit this stuff, right?
We're not going to.
No. Well, okay. Thank you for having me here. So let's call it traditional medicine.
There we go.
That's probably the easiest way to say it. Or evidence-based medicine.
Got it.
But really all medicine is based off of some type of research, some type of knowledge base that improves the quality of care. So I was working in the traditional model, and I was working for a physician who at that time had developed a business model that hopefully I could be a part of. And that was everyone's dream, right? To be able to practice the way you want to be a part of a growing business, but also being able to change the community and help take care of people. Midway through me working with this individual, I was at that point had my first child, and he was 3 months old, and I was sitting next to him in what we called the pit, right? So we all kind of sat together, all of us providers, and my phone bings, and I get this text message that says, "Oh, it'd be great if today was your last day." So, and then he just got up and left the room. So I was literally fired from the practice because it was going under.
Wow.
So he filed bankruptcy, the practice was going under, and I had patients booked out for 3 months, right? And also I'm the primary breadwinner for my family and have a newborn child. And I went outside after that text message and thought to myself, what am I going to do? Like, what am I going to do? I need to feed my family. I need to pay my mortgage. Like, I'm invested in this community. I've been taking care of these patients, and there were no positions for me in Pagosa, so I ended up working in Alamosa. So I would drive over to Alamosa, and I would work locums in the hospital. They'd put me in the urgent care or clinic or wherever they needed me.
Which that's like a 2-hour commute, or hour and a half at least.
2.5.
Jeez.
Then if I wasn't in Alamosa, then I would go all the way to San Luis Valley, and I would work there. So I was doing FaceTime with my baby. I wasn't home most of the time, because I was traveling and working. So it's a really funny story. It was a snowy day, and all I wanted to do was get home. That's it. And I had just finished my shift, and the snowstorm was coming, and I needed to get over the pass. And I'm driving over the pass, and at that time I'm driving, I'm praying. I'm like, God, give me a sign, right? Give me a sign that I need to be home, that I need to be in Pagosa. And just then 2 semis started sliding. And of course I'm just like focused on getting home. I drove right through the semis and kept driving. God, give me a sign that I need to be home. And I get over the top of Wolf Creek, and I'm coming around the hairpin turn, and there's flares along the side of the road. And it was literally like white out.
Yeah.
It was really dangerous. And the flares were going, and this guy flags me down, and I stop, and I roll down the window and realize that his semi had rolled on the inside. And there was a tree through the cab of the truck.
Jeez.
And this guy was like, "What are you doing? The pass is closed. Like, you are not supposed to be here." And of course, in my mind, I'm like, God, give me a sign that I need to be in Pagosa.
Your third, your fourth, your fifth sign.
And then it dawned on me, I was like, oh, the pass is closed. Like, literally, I am not going back. So that night I went home and I wrote my business plan, and I developed Alpine Medical. And I had Alpine Medical going in the traditional model for 5 years. And I realized that I still wasn't practicing the way I wanted to. I wasn't making the changes that I knew I could with people's health. And it was 2.5 years ago that I decided to change my model completely. And now it is what it is.
Yeah. And would you call, so first of all, what a great story, the sign. And for everybody listening, if you're not familiar with Wolf Creek Pass, it is no joke of a mountain pass. My wife hates driving over Wolf Creek.
Yes.
So yeah, I don't even know how you got on it with it being closed. But
I was determined to get home.
Serendipitous. Yeah. Yes. Wild. Literally the pass is closed. What a great sign. So, okay. So 5 years then of Alpine doing, I already forgot the term we agreed on, traditional.
Yeah.
Traditional medicine.
Sure.
Thank you. Correct me throughout for doing traditional medicine. And then you made a shift 2.5 years ago. I believe the term now is functional medicine for how Alpine practices. Is that
yes. So I do functional medicine, but I do a lot of medicine, so to speak. I'm not just one type of practice. So I still follow a lot of the evidence base because there is some benefit to it. And the functional medicine gives me that ability to think outside the box.
Yeah.
So I guess you could call me a Swiss Army knife of medicine.
Which, and for everyone, could you define functional medicine?
Like, what do you mean?
Like what would be the difference? What's the difference in layman's terms between traditional medicine and functional medicine?
I could be wrong with this, though. Now you're asking me something
okay.
that I may not know the answer
to. Not like a formal definition, but just so that we know like the different approaches and kind of the different...
Functional medicine gives you the ability to look at the individual from a more complete aspect, right? So you can look at them from how they're eating, how they're living, what they're putting in their body, how their hormones are. It just gives you the ability to look at the whole person in a way and then think outside the box with how you're going to take care of them. So you can do natural approach, you can do bioidentical approach, you can do, dietary and behavioral approaches, that kind of thing.
Is there, speaking of that Swiss Army knife idea, is that uncommon in the medical field to sort of have, because I could be, obviously I'm by no means an expert in your world, but it seems to me like there's usually two schools of thought, I guess I'll call it, but you're sort of your traditional medicine and then kind of your naturopathic type approach. It seems to me like kind of that being able to have that Swiss Army knife approach, they can kind of overlap. Is that a safe assumption? And is that common in the medical field?
I would say it's not common in the medical field, but it's probably the way that most providers would like to practice, but not allowed to practice.
Tell me more about that, because you had talked a little bit about even at your past job, and then even when you were starting Alpine Medical, you used words like, I still wasn't practicing the way I want to practice.
Yeah.
Walk me through that. What does that look like, and what's been that evolution to how do you want to practice?
Well, this is kind of a very heated subject right now, which is insurance. So when you're doing the traditional model, usually our system is set up to where a patient will come in that, you're going to give this card that's going to say that their insurance company is going to pay for the visit. And as a provider, then we are kind of stuck in an algorithm that we have to practice. Meaning, because I've been on both sides of the fence, I used to joke and say that I've been sent to the principal's office because I used to not follow the algorithm. So essentially, when you come in to see a provider and you are doing a visit under insurance, you're only allowed to maybe cover 3 topics. Let's say you can talk about your high blood pressure, you can talk about your high cholesterol, and you can talk about your sore shoulder. And if you go beyond that, the insurance company is not going to reimburse for it. So when you're in the traditional model as a provider, you see a patient and you have to basically address a few issues at a time and then have them follow up, or come in for the other issues they want to address. And it leads to a cycle of not actually addressing the issue because you are following up on one thing after the other, and usually things get lost, they get overlooked. And a lot of times it comes down to, like, let's say blood pressure, let's say someone has hypertension, they come in, and as a provider, if they fall within the algorithm of hypertension, we need to start them on a blood pressure medication. And then if we start them on a blood pressure medication, they need to follow up for another visit to ensure that the blood pressure medication is working and it's providing therapeutic effects. So the traditional model sets up, one, for continued follow-up, never really addressing the underlying issues, and not following anything or not thinking outside the algorithm.
Right.
So the way that I like to practice is take that knowledge base, because it's helpful. I mean, there's a reason why the studies were done to prove that certain medications help, but why don't we think about how to get off of the medication? Why don't we think about living in a way that we're going to balance the body to not need it? And so that comes to looking at the entire person. Does that make sense?
Yes. So tell me more then about how that approach, the preferred way, looking at the entire person. And actually, before we get there though, the idea then being that, let's say, to stick with just the example, somebody comes in for high blood pressure, the immediate reaction is to prescribe medication. There's follow-ups. You're seeing that the medication's working. Does that ever end, or is that an ongoing, like, when does then the blood pressure get fixed, or is it medicated long term, and that's the maintenance approach to it, or the solution, I guess, would be that you figure out the balance of medications, generally speaking, and that's kind of the longer term plan there?
So traditionally, right, you would hope that if a patient was prescribed a blood pressure medication, their blood pressure is going to stabilize. And that medication is going to keep them within a therapeutic range. But the reality is that our body regulates blood pressure through 5 different systems. And the medications that we use to prescribe blood pressure will address one system. And then when they fail that, then we address the other system. And that's what we would call evidence-based medicine, right? You fail one class only to be prescribed another class, and so on and so forth, to maintain or treat an issue that really comes down to a cellular imbalance. And cellular imbalance is all things. It's inflammation in our body, it's our autoimmune response, it's our hormone levels, it's the way that we're eating, the way we're thinking, the way we're moving. I mean, it's the entirety of how we live. But we are in a reactive system where you see the problem, high blood pressure or high sugars, and you get prescribed something.
Treat the problem. Right.
Yeah.
Okay. And so then the preferred approach, and you had mentioned too, that the anecdote that probably most providers want to function this way, it seems like, is really trying to figure out and address that did you call it the cellular? What did you call it?
Cellular imbalance.
Cellular imbalance.
Yeah.
Tell me more about that. Talk to me about the cellular imbalance and kind of what that approach looks like from a medical perspective.
Well, as you know, I'm a mother of small children. So whenever I think of healthcare and cellular imbalances, I literally think of the song, Head, Shoulders, Knees and Toes, right? So our body is connected. And our cells are interconnected. Our red blood cells are flowing through our body, and they're releasing serotonin, they're transferring oxygen, they're helping create new cells. And so if we have one cell that is, let's say, malfunctioning, that's only going to lead to another cell malfunctioning, and then that leads to another and to another, and that leads to disease processes, multiple disease processes. So usually when someone is diagnosed with high blood pressure, there has been an underlying cellular imbalance for years before the high blood pressure showed up. And that could be from the liver not metabolizing, the kidneys not working, vasoconstriction not being where it should be. I mean, there's a lot of different components that lead to this multiple cellular malfunction that then presents as a disease. So what I like to do is put patients back in control. And when I say to put them back in control, letting them look at their health in a way that is going to reverse disease. And when we're reversing disease, we're literally just improving cellular function. So getting to the root of the problem, fixing it, and then you heal from the inside out.
Reversing disease.
That's a really powerful claim, right?
It is. Tell me more about that. Because on the surface, it seems absurd. But I believe, I'll share with you. We were talking about it off camera, before we started officially podcasting. We're talking about your husband Phil, and he's in his 40s and healthiest he's ever been. I was sharing with you how I'm in my 30s and I'm the healthiest I've ever been, and I definitely have seen the impact of lifestyle change and how that impacts just like overall health and wellness and things like that. With the caveat, though, that I would never say that I've never been one that's suffered from a disease or that I've had like a thing that needs to get. I've just wanted to be better, feel better, and, perform better or whatever. So I'm curious how that works of like, and maybe even if you could define what a disease is, but I'm fascinated with that concept of being able to reverse a disease, and I want to learn more about that.
Okay, so you had mentioned something very powerful. You have been in a place where you recognize your body was talking to you. It was saying, I want to feel better, I want to be better. That right there was your body's way of saying there's cellular imbalance. Something needs to change. And a lot of us push through that. We don't pay attention to it. And disease is literally lack of, ease. So when there is lack of balance in our body, when there is lack of cellular function, homeostasis, even poorly controlled cytokine levels, like our body gets to a place where it's compensating. And that's when we push through, and if we keep continuing to push through, that's when things start to break down. And that's when you end up with the disease process, whether it's any disease process you want to think of. Thyroid, hypertension, cholesterol, like it doesn't matter what you label it as. It all comes down to cellular imbalance that began a long time ago for one reason or another.
Right.
And then it started talking to us like you recognized, and you made changes in your life that improved your physical feeling, right?
And my mental.
Yeah. So you are one of the very few who've had the opportunity to recognize that signaling pathway, your body talking to you, opening that dialogue, recognizing it, changing it, and reversing disease. Because if you had not paid attention to it, where would you be now?
Yeah. Actually, just interesting for conversationally, would you consider anxiety a disease?
Sure.
Like by definition, would that fit into that category?
But we all have some level of anxiety. Right. So I don't want to create this or add to the negative stigma to mental health. Right. Yeah. But we all suffer from some level of anxiety, some level of depression, some level of angst of any type. Right. But what contributes to that? Well, multiple things. The neurotransmitter reuptake, the communication, the way that they're firing and they're absorbing, whether it's serotonin, norepinephrine, dopamine, it doesn't matter. Like the way our body is metabolizing and communicating is then what we're expressing in an emotional, physical level. Right.
So it's fascinating though, because I was sitting here saying that, I was just trying to go from good to great or whatever. So one of the biggest things that catapulted my lifestyle change was a battle with anxiety. And it got to the point where my anxiety was so extreme that I could barely do stuff with my kids anymore. Like it was wild. It would present itself in like outdoor adventure type activities, which is also where I would find my smile. It's like my happy place was doing that too. So it was this incredibly conflicting battle that I was, and it got to the point where I would have anxiety if I would take my kids fishing. Like I would drive to the lake and I would be, fishing next to the truck and have anxiety about like, the truck's going to break down. How are we going to get out of it? Like it was terrible. It's crippling. And that's actually been by far the biggest impact of kind of my health journey the last 2 years, I guess I'd call it, has been the homeostasis, I think, as you called it, with my mental state. Like for sure, I've had some great, like the physical benefits have been awesome, but the most profound by far has been that my anxiety, I don't have anxiety anymore. Yeah. I actually get to enjoy
hanging
adventures and being outside and playing with my kids and stuff, and it's been wild. So anyway, I wanted to clarify that earlier when I was sharing my story, I assumed that I didn't have anything, but I absolutely did and still do.
Did you change your diet?
I cut out alcohol.
Okay.
Yeah, that's been the biggest difference. Is I stopped drinking alcohol. I'm right at 18 months now without any alcohol, and that definitely kind of it was interesting. Because I've always exercised, I've always eaten mostly clean, but I drank. And never in excess, but a couple whiskeys a night. I had a moderate amount all the time. I was going to say frequently, but it was every night. Yeah. And when I stopped drinking alcohol, that's when my mental health started to change. But also then my physical ability kind of skyrocketed. I was recovering better. I was, sleeping better. My mind was healing. Yeah. I mean, all of those things. I think the only difference is that I've done in the last 2 years diet-wise is introducing more protein, intentional supplemental protein. But other than that, just cut out alcohol and kept living my life and, running more, which is probably because now I have to deal with my stuff. So I have to run forever instead of just drinking away my stuff. There's a whole nother podcast about that, but no, it's fascinating because one of the things I'm interested about and I want to hear your perspective on is I've had a tendency, sometimes I can come across kind of as like salesy, I guess I'll call it, because I figured out a personal kind of formula that has helped me be happy, helped me kind of thrive and feel good. And, I'm working towards living this best version of myself. And I try to like, bring my loved ones along or, encourage people. It's kind of why I'm doing this whole inspire by example and like chasing greatness movement type of thing. But I've always been like the uneducated, flying by the seat of my pants, emotional guy. Like, I'm like, I don't know, but I feel better when I do this, so I'm going to keep doing that. I don't know any of the science behind it or, anything like that. And it seems to me like some of the stuff that I've found, I'll just call it instinctually, exercising or working on my mental health or eating clean or whatever it might be, that there's also like science-backed, benefits to it. Tell me more about that. Because what I'm getting at is I've almost found that there's like humans, I think, have gotten so far away from the way we're supposed to function that then that cascading, series of events happens. And all of a sudden it's like, gosh, no wonder we feel lousy. We're not moving, we're eating crappy food. We're spending all of our time in front of a screen. We're not having those, deep emotional connections and all of these things. And that's me just kind of being the pie in the sky, like old school guy a little bit. But I'm wondering if there's some science and some medical research to back sort of just like even the way we live to, contributing to a happier, healthier life.
Yes, there is. But if I were to get into it, that's like months of discussion, which
you
is,
say that all the time. No.
I know. No, but there's, oh gosh.
Start high level for me.
Like, what do you mean?
Just like broad about.
So, okay. We're going to go back to that feeling, right? You said that you just, hey, this feels good, so I'm going to continue living this path.
Right.
Right. One of the things that I like to see people do is have that open dialogue again, right? That feeling of knowing, because our body really does know how to take care of itself. And we instinctively know how to get ourselves there. It's just we've become so, for lack of a better word, complacent, right? And expectant of someone to fix me, someone to take care of me, when really we have all the tools within. So when you're, from a scientific standpoint, like when you're looking at your health, all components of it, you need to look literally at every aspect of your life. That means how you're, like I mentioned earlier, how you're moving, how you're eating, how you're thinking. If your endocrine system is like your cells, right? And I say endocrine, but I mean actually all components of our body are functioning properly. So when we are in a place of balance, that means all aspects of that are balanced. Did that kind of answer it?
Well, yeah, it's what I'm grinning because this whole like chasing greatness thing I've been working on. It's meant to be sort of like holistic greatness. Yeah. It's, I want to talk about, building wealth and mental health and physical health and academic, like I'm trying to create this, I'm trying to create messaging out there about holistic greatness in other components of our lives. So that's why I was grinning, because you're, in the physical and mental health space, like you were talking about, it's sort of like you have to check all of the boxes, and that's how it, everything can kind of elevate from there.
As a medical provider, I call them components of health. And I've already mentioned it, nutrition, because food can either heal you or kill you. And so literally how we eat is going to fuel our immune system, our cellular replication, our ATP production. Like there's so much that food does for us, but it doesn't have to be complicated. It doesn't have to be stressful. It doesn't have to be all of the things that it is now. It really is very innate when we're eating healthy, in tune with our immune system, which is my specialty, is calming the autoimmune response. And I know we're gonna meet on January about that kind of stuff. But and then there's movement, and I make a joke with people and I say, if you're not moving, you're dead. literally, if you can't move, what are you doing? So many activities of our daily living require movement, brushing our teeth, combing our hair, like walking out to our car, whatever it might be. And then there's hormones. And the reality is that, yes, we all have hormones. Whether you're male or female, we all have hormones. And hormones are so powerful to longevity. They protect us from cancer, dementia, cardiac disease. Like, they can help keep us long and lean and strong and healthy. And then there's the detox. And I know detox is a pretty trendy thing that people talk about, but it's not trendy at all. We do it every night when we sleep. You don't have to do crazy teas and all these protocols. Literally, that comes back to getting your body back to cellular function. So when your body is able to go through its digestive process, and the liver is able to go through its 2 phases and 7 enzymes of cleaning itself out, your body can clean itself and heal itself every single night. So, and then there's what I do, the actual medical portion of it, of bringing all those components together.
Yeah. How do you get there? All those components, bringing them together. Walk me through that process.
How do you get there?
Yeah, like for you, as a medical professional, when you're working on identifying all of those components, bringing them together. I'm just curious, I want to get in your mind a little bit about, like, you know, how that works when you're interacting with a patient, and kind of what that process looks like, and how you kind of corral it all in.
So I realized early on in my medical career that people won't change unless they're ready. I grew up on a ranch, and we have horses, and that saying is true. You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make a drink, right? Same with people. I could lay it all out on how to eat, how to live, how to move. I could give them every tool and resource available, but if they're not ready and they're not committed to make the change, nothing is going to happen. So how I bring it all together now is making the individual accountable for their health, putting them back in the driver's seat. And then from there, taking that accountability and creating that emotional connection, the importance of being able to live in a place of health and wellness. Like you mentioned with your kids, like going fishing, like you weren't present. You were 1 foot in, 1 foot out when you were living in this place of anxiety, worrying if the truck's going to break down. Right. Like that created an emotional connection for you because you knew that you weren't present for your kids.
Yeah.
Most people aren't. They don't have that. So taking the accountability and our own need to be healthy and then attaching it to something as to why. Why do we need to be healthy? And then from there, addressing those imbalances in their body, whether it's physiological, right? So I'm still a medical provider, right? And I still love scientific data. So I still do blood draws and things like that. But then I address the inner work, right? The emotional component of it, the nutritional component of it, and the physical, like moving component of it.
So it's not just like 1 hour and an insurance checklist.
No.
It's interesting though that why really resonated with me. I've told you in the past that, off camera, that I run ultras, and one of the topics of conversations out on the trail often with runners is like, what's your why? Why are you here? What are you working on?
Yeah.
And when I get the benefit of hindsight, kind of looking back on my life, for example, the anxiety thing, I just knew that I wanted my kids to have a good enough life that it was worth it for me to fight it. You know what I mean? Like it was a non-negotiable. I didn't know necessarily how or where or when or what the path was going to look like for me to be able to do these great, amazing things with my kids. But it was important to me enough that they were raised that way that I was going to figure it out. And so I started running, because in my mind, I'm like, well, if I can at least physically get myself out of any situation, then I can whatever.
Figure it out.
Be strong enough to carry my kids and get out of there,
Yeah.
Whatever. But that wasn't enough. And it's fascinating as you're talking about kind of these different components of health. For a long time in mine, I was focused on the physical part of it. I thought that if I got in good enough shape that, the rest of it would fall into place, and it didn't. And then, those other components had to sort of happen as well. And then all of a sudden I start to experience some healing. It's just fascinating. I get to see a little bit about how that process works and what that impact's like. I'm curious, you mentioned kind of that idea of you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. One of the things that I've experienced in my life is like, I told you or how sometimes I can come across as salesy when I'm like, I find something new or I learn something and I want to share it with people that I love. And I'm like, no, you don't understand. Like, if you do these things take investing in the stock market, for example. I'm like, no, trust me. Doesn't have to take a little bit of money every month, and you'll see it's going to be great, but you got to trust me on this or whatever. And then, of course, nobody does it. But from a practitioner perspective, putting your patients in the driver's seat has got to be a little bit, I don't know if risky is the right word, but it's a totally different approach where, from a traditional sense, the practitioner is in charge. The practitioner's writing the prescription, giving the, instructions or whatever. Seems to me like you've got this structure now where there's this sort of shared journey and the patient, for lack of a better term, being back in the driving seat of their own health. I've got to imagine that brings with it some complexities. And from your seat, I'm speculating, so I'm curious your thoughts on it, but frustrations, maybe even of like, drink the water, we led you to water, drink, but walk me through that about, because what I'm fascinated about from a business perspective is that it puts you in a little bit of a vulnerable, like somebody could easily come and say, Tabitha, it didn't work. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like, because it's this shared responsibility now where like you have to trust, you both have to do the work. And so I'm just kind of curious how that works and what that feels like from a practitioner.
So, first of all, I say to patients when they say it didn't work, I say, well, you didn't do it. Because it does work.
Right.
I have been practicing the way that I practice since like 2011. So this is not just made up. There has been years of research and even tracking data and making sure that I have this algorithm just right so that people do get their optimal health. But you brought up a really good point that, again, it is a partnership that we're doing. I frequently will say to people, I'm the Sherpa, but they're still getting to the top of Everest.
Still gotta walk. Yeah.
They still have to do it, but I'm going to give the tools and resources that they need, but they have to put in the work. And when I meet with someone, it's essentially an interview. Like I'm making sure that they're going to be committed to themselves because I give it my all. My team and we give it our all. To each person, we dedicate 100% of our effort. And if the individual is not going to give 100% of their effort, then it's not a good match. And that's why I sit down and I meet with people before I bring them on to the practice because one, I like success, right? But really, honestly, I want to make sure that they're going to invest in themselves because I'm going to invest in them.
Right.
So I will ask them when I sit down and meet with them, I'll say, is it your responsibility or my responsibility to show up and do the work? And their answer should be, it's my responsibility, right? They have to be in control. And then same as your responsibility or my responsibility to trust the process. Well, it's their responsibility to trust the process. So once they make that connection that they are involved and they are in the driver's seat, they want to succeed.
Yeah.
And that's where it changed. Like every individual that I have had the pleasure to work with, and it is a pleasure because we come out in a completely different place. I mean, some people have described what they go through as cathartic. They change their life. I've had people change their careers and write whole business plans because they have the energy and the mental clarity and like the drive again because they're balanced within, but they've addressed that will that was not even is now even.
Right.
Right.
Gosh, that's got to be. I get it. I have a really fulfilling job because I get to help people's businesses thrive, and I love it. Like when I get to, see sales go up for somebody or, impact somebody's livelihood in that way, it's a really fulfilling endeavor for me. So I get to relate to it just a tiny bit. But mine's from a business perspective. You get to like actually see people's lives change. Mm-hmm. I want to hear more about that because what a cool seat to sit in and, opportunity that you get to have where you get to, I can't imagine what that's like to watch somebody now all of a sudden have this newfound energy and write business plans and change careers and all of that stuff. Do you have any stories or examples or just fun memories of those wins or the big changes or anything like that? Because I just got to imagine that it's so cool to be able to see somebody start to thrive.
I have tons of stories, but I'll bring in the scientific part of it. So I had mentioned I'm still a scientist at heart, and I love measurable data. So with each person, we're still doing blood pressure. We're still doing lab draws. We're still doing, I don't care about weight, right? That's not really what is a determinant factor of our longevity, right, and how we're going to live. But as a medical provider, when I sit down with people and I see that they have diabetes and we reverse their diabetes in less than 3 months, I have been practicing medicine a long time, and I can tell you there is no drug on the market that will reverse diabetes in 3 months, let alone lower the A1Cs or get their insulin levels stable in the way that the body does.
Right.
The body is so powerful. I've had individuals where I've sat down and I've looked at their cholesterol levels, right? And one of their markers, triglycerides, which is a very scary marker. It's the true determinant of inflammatory response. They've been a heart attack walking level, right? Like 300 plus, where insurance model, we want it like 130 and below, but for hormone balance, we want it 50 and below. And they've been on several medications for their cholesterol, and to take them through a 4-month process and get them off of their cholesterol medication, off their blood pressure medication, and their cholesterol normal is powerful. I mean, literally, we took this individual's cardiac risk ratio and reversed it to where he's not going to have a heart attack or stroke. He's going to have time with his grandchildren, which was his why when we sat down and met. Like, he's like, I don't want to have a heart attack and stroke. I have these children and grandchildren that I want to be present for. So,
through just lifestyle, diet and lifestyle changes, or does it vary?
All of it. So the hormones, getting your body to get back to its homeostasis, right? Getting cellular function back to where it should be. Eating in a way that's in tune with your immune system. So I'm not a big fan of macros and calorie counting and that kind of stuff. It works for people. It stresses me out. So I'm not going to ask anyone to do something that I'm not willing to do myself. And so truly there are certain responses. Foods are inflammatory, and we teach people how to eat in a way that's going to reduce inflammation in their body while also giving them the tools to move, right? So they can actually live and hike and do whatever activities they like to do. And then working on that inner work, the cognitive behavioral portion of it.
Tell me more about that. How does the mind work into all of this?
And the mind is powerful. Actually, Kate and I were talking about this when we were driving over today. We were talking about how, have you ever seen the book, The Body Keeps the Score?
I haven't.
So I've seen it as a medical professional that there are moments in our life that change our immune response. I'm going to back up for a second, and I know it does not flow with the podcast. I'm sorry, because my brain just works in a different way. So I am advanced hormone certified, and in order to become advanced hormone certified, I needed to go and learn how the advanced people were doing it, right? And so that led me to a lot of great conferences. And I happened to stumble upon this conference that was a World Health Conference. So it's professionals from all over the world. And there's little old me from Pagosa Springs, right? And the purpose of the conference, and it's going to tie to the mental portion, right, was to teach us providers how to treat Alzheimer's, dementia, cardiac disease, and cancer naturally. Powerful, right? That's what we all hope for. So we're going to focus on the cancer portion, and I'm going to oversimplify this, right? to not do it justice, yeah. Right? So what this gentleman is doing, we're calling him Dr. M because if I pronounced his name, it would be wrong. He's from India, and I don't want to butcher his name. So he's literally taking patients who have been given worst prognosis, failed chemo, failed radiation, like just worst outcome you could imagine. And he's doing a simple lab draw and figuring out where in their immune response is it malfunctioning, where in their immune system is it not functioning properly. And then he's taking it to his lab in India and rebuilding the immune response, right? And then he converted a dialysis machine into where he could do this immune response. And so literally he's taking the patient's blood, boosting it, fixing it, cleaning the immune response, and putting it back in them, to the point where he had slides of the patient's own white blood cells eating the cancer cells.
Wow.
I mean, I was like just in awe. And of course, my husband Phil was with me at this conference, and I joked with him, and I was like, man, if we didn't have the kids, and we didn't have I'd work for that guy for free, because what he's doing is changing medicine. He's literally
paid good money to see Phil watching.
Yeah. Well, he's, as always, a very good husband, and he told me to put on my big girl panties and go and ask him a question, right? And I'm like, no, I'm not smart enough. I'm not going to ask this guy a question. And he's like, seriously, ask him a question. So I waited till coffee break like a total stalker, right? He was by himself. I ran over there, and I was like, hey, doc, I'm a nurse practitioner in rural Colorado. So I'm a little provider and a little praise, but our job is prevention. As nurse practitioners, we are taught to look at the individual and anticipate their needs. From the very beginning, we are trained a preventative, proactive model. And so I asked him, is there one common thread amongst every patient you've treated that I can look for? In my mind, I'm like, oh, I'm going to order that lab on every person.
Right.
Right. And he put down his coffee and he said, that's the best question I've ever been asked. They do have something in common. Regardless of their cancer, regardless of their prognosis, they all have one trait in common: trauma. What is trauma? Life. So, and it could be big events, little events, everyday low-level stress events, right? Living in a place that creates a lot of anxiety, working for a job who makes us, stressed every day. I used to, at that old job I worked at with before the provider went under, I used to call it the Viper Pit, because I'd go in there and I'd tell Phil, I'd be like, I'm headed to the Viper Pit today. I'm not going to make any sudden movements. It's going to be fine, right? But that low-level stress, it doesn't matter what it is, that trauma creates a stress response in the body. That stress response in the body changes our hormones, it changes our blood flow, it changes our vascular, it changes the way our body functions. And so every person, I don't care who you are, we have moments in our life that we can think of that changed that response in our body. And so when I work with people, I ask them to heal completely, go as deep as they want to, because our body holds on to that. Our brain is continually scanning and looking for that fight or flight response. Is that person going to cut me off again? Am I going to get left behind? Those moments that create cellular change. And so when I work with people, I want them to heal completely from the inside out. And so that's why I can say that people work through like moments where they have that mental clarity to then take on bigger challenges. Yeah.
Oh man. Yeah. What a profound thing. And everybody has traumas, I think one great thing that I'm seeing in terms of just like a societal shift or norms or kind of the destigmatization of things is definitely mental health, at least in my spheres, the circles that I run with, it's become normalized to kind of talk about traumas and work through them and whatever. But how fascinating to think about how intertwined it all is with all of our systems and our health and all of that stuff, to think that literally it can be as impactful as to help curing cancer, which I don't think is an overstatement, but it's powerful. It almost sounds false to say out loud. It's that powerful. I'm trying to wrap my head around like how great that is, how cool that is. And I could just talk to you for hours and hours and hours, because I'm like, oh my gosh, don't you want to like put a megaphone in front of this and scream it from the mountaintops of like that there are the answers, that there's, because I feel like, and this is me just speculating, and I'm not educated in the matter except for a couple podcast conversations, but I think that there's such a slippery slope, I think, in people's lifestyles, and we suppress some of our traumas, or we have the job that we hate, and we sit in traffic and stress, and we keep kind of like, and all of a sudden though, you look back 10 years and you're like, I am miserable. And because it happened sort of, slowly but surely and slow and steady.
It's like the lobster in the pot.
Yeah, exactly. The water started boiling, before we knew it. I'm curious on that note, because I'm such a huge fan of what you do and like the power of ourselves to heal ourselves, to do all that work and all those components like you have talked about. What signs could people be looking for, though, that their water's getting warm? It's not boiling yet, but like we're not in a state of homeostasis. Like we're not thriving. What are some of those early indicators, maybe, that whether it's diet, lifestyle, the mental health component or whatever, that something's off early on?
So I use this example in my stress hormones and health talk. Our body gives us 7 very distinct signs that it's in distress. But before I list the 7 signs, if you have any like inkling of like, oh, I don't feel right, or I could be better, that is the deepest communication that you can have. But
your instinct?
Yeah, absolutely. So 80% of communication comes from the gut to the brain, only 20% down. So when things are off, it's going to start talking to you. So when they say trust
your gut?
Yeah, absolutely.
There's science behind that?
Yes. So the first sign that our body gives us is a headache. Well, what do we do? I mean, I literally give this example. Like, we take a pill.
Tylenol.
Yeah. And then the body says, no, I'm trying to get your attention. I'm out of balance. I'm in a state of disease, right? Lack of balance. And so it gives us sinus congestion. So what do? We take an allergy medicine, right? Or we get Mucinex, or we go to the doctor and we get prescribed something because we think it's an infection. And the body says, no, I'm out of balance. So the third sign it gives us is indigestion. Well, what do we assume? It's we had that heavy meal from the night before. We pop a couple Tums. It's not that big of a deal, right? And the body says, no, I need you to hear me. I'm out of balance. So it gives you a little bit of like rash, dry skin, something. And of course, we assume we live in Colorado. There's dry skin. It's wintertime. We put a cream on it. And the body says, no, I am out of balance. So it gives us joint pain. And I always say to people that joint pain, arthritis, is not a normal part of aging. You are not supposed to hurt as you age. Your body...
Say that again.
You are not supposed to hurt as you age.
One more time. No, okay. I want to come back to that, okay?
Yeah. So we get joint pain. And what do? We take Tylenol, Aleve, or we go and we get a prescription like meloxicam or even something stronger, right? And the body says, no, I'm out of balance. And now at this point, you're having actual cellular response, a physiological imbalance, where your blood pressure is up, your thyroid levels are off, maybe your hormones are off, like your cholesterol is off. So you are given that warning sign from the doctor or provider, whoever it is, and they say, hey, these levels are off, so I'm going to put you on a medication or we're going to watch it. But there's internal changes going on. And the seventh and final sign that your body gives you that it's out of balance is when you have the full-blown disease. Whether it's the cardiac event, you end up with autoimmune crisis, psoriatic arthritis, lupus, Sjogren's, or you end up worse, heart attack, stroke, cancer, death. So.
Yeah. So, okay, so walk me through that then. I'm trying to be in tune, and I'm listening to the signals my body's sending me. Maybe it's a headache, maybe it's congestion, whatever. How then do you assess and solve? Like if something's off, aside from coming and seeing you, obviously. Rule number one, go, schedule an appointment at Alpine Medical. But if you can't do that, how do you start to kind of like look at
the bigger picture
components of your life? Yeah. And
I mean, literally write out where things are. And rate yourself. There's nothing wrong with doing that. Like on a scale of 1 to 10, where is the quality of my work? Scale of 1 to 10, the quality of time with my family, my food choices, right? My sleep habits, my working out practices, like my mental health practice. Like look at all aspects of your life and try to figure out where is it not balanced. And that would be the good starting point.
Yeah.
Then from there, you're going to need to go and see someone.
Right. Yeah. Go and officially, kind of tackle it. It's so interesting though, because it almost seems like so much of this stuff, and I don't want to like jump to conclusions or get too far ahead of ourselves, but it's almost instinctual.
Totally.
To live the best version of ourselves and have the happiest, healthiest lives is instinctual. Is that too far of a stretch?
No, you're absolutely right on. And when I frequently meet with people, we take an account of where they are, and I will say to them, you know your body better than I do. You've spent your entire life in your body, and I'm only meeting you for the first time, right? So these signs and symptoms and things that it's saying really are going to help me understand you better, but you know yourself better than I do. And when your body's talking to you, it's telling you it needs help. And then when you start listening to it, it will start, and you give it what it needs, it will start healing itself. We track every person we work with because, again, it's a scientist in me, and it's amazing to see how quickly the body will respond. It is powerful. Like it wants to be healthy. And I've worked with people who are as young as a few days old and as not as young as a few days old, well into their 90s, late 90s. And they have all improved their health.
Change can happen that late in life?
Age does not define your health. It does not define your health.
Tell me more about that. I'm fascinated about. So it's interesting. Just the other day, I was talking to my parents last night and my grandmother on Christmas Day, and I was just thinking about aging, and like what a bizarre experience it must be, just to be like acutely aware of your mortality and it's a lonely chapter in a lot of people's lives, and I just was sensitive to it because I was actually FaceTiming my grandma on Christmas morning. She's 87 and she's amazing. She's healthy and happy, but she was emotional FaceTiming me just because, get to see the kids and whatever. And then she has this brunch, and I was talking to my dad about it last night. He's like, there was like 30 people there, and grandma was just on cloud nine the whole time. And I was eating that up, just kind of hearing about the experiences of that. But it made me, the topic of conversation last night was like how bizarre aging must be, just because of like the desire to live, I would assume, doesn't change. You're more acutely aware of your own mortality though, and like life stages are changing and whatever. But I do think that sometimes people, and yeah, I'm even starting to see it in my peer group, and we're in our 30s and 40s, it like dismissing things as aging. Like, we're, I'm getting old. My back hurts, or, whatever. I'm getting old. I think we already mentioned this, but off camera, we're talking about how I feel like I'm the healthiest and happiest I've ever been. Phil is in his 40s, all these things, but
he's almost 50.
It's great, right? and ripped. But I want to hear more about that, like that idea of, I don't know if I'll call it aging gracefully, but I was joking when I made you repeat it 4 times, but very sincerely, that idea that aging doesn't need to be painful, like that you can still be. Just talk to me about that, because I think that's that could change some of our perspectives if we understand that, like, for anybody listening, it's never too late to start to make a change and to feel better, but 2, how much it can benefit. Like, just because you're 30 doesn't mean you could still have a better. If you're 90, you could have a better 10 years or better 6, whatever. But I just want to hear more about how this approach to health and wellness, how it relates with aging, and this idea that aging doesn't have to be painful.
So you've probably seen that there's a lot of theory on inflammation and aging, right? But there is proof that as our body becomes inflamed, as it leads to more cellular malfunction, that leads to breakdown, and that's what leads to the aging process. And so when I work with individuals, really what we're doing is reversing the autoimmune response. We're calming the inflammatory triggers, and we're getting rid of the inflammation in their body, and therefore they get healthier. So every individual, and let's say individual ages 70 and above, right? They all have some level of pain, joint pain. And as we go through their lifestyle and figuring out their immune triggers, balancing their hormones and getting them moving again, they all reverse their pain. All their pain goes away. I have one individual who is, 93, and what was her why? She said, I'm an older grandma and I want to be able to dance at my grandson's wedding. But not only that, she said, I want to go up to the mountain and watch them ski. I may not ski, or I might, right? But for a 93-year-old to be at a place where they can say, I want to get on top of Wolf Creek and maybe put on some skis, right? But also,
an option, yeah.
And to be able to say that I'm going to dance at my grandson's wedding tells me that the mind never ages. Right. I was, again, joking earlier with Kate. I was like, I'm in my 40s and my brain is still in its 30s. Right. But I feel, and I literally physically feel like I'm still in my early 30s, late 20s. Like, I think the same way, I move the same way. And I'm hoping that I continue to have this deficit of decades as I age, so that I continue to age gracefully, as you said. But the important takeaway is that the body doesn't care how old you are. The chronological age has nothing to do with it. Cellular function is what's going to determine our longevity. So the healthier our cells function, the healthier we are, period.
Right.
So.
And then can you live forever?
The body is not meant to break down.
Do you
maybe not, maybe we don't want to live forever, but we can definitely live a lot longer than we are.
At risk of totally digressing, because there's a little bit of a joke, but I'm also a little bit curious. Like, do you sincerely believe that we can stave off, that humans can live way longer than we are? That there actually is some likelihood of longevity and longer life spans, not cycles.
I do. Yeah. I do. And I think that we're going to find that the more and more it's going to become our reality.
Do you think that we're almost going back, like just generally speaking, humans in general, we're almost reverting back to the way, I don't know, more of a natural or evolutionary kind of approach to health and wellness, or is this sort of approach new? Because the reason why I'm curious about it is because to me it's like duh, as we're talking about it, I'm like, oh my gosh, I want everybody to know about this. It's such a no brainer. It almost feels like natural, and I'm just kind of curious and I know that obviously you're not a historian and we don't have a crystal ball or anything, but if humans used to sort of have or maybe it's a new luxury. Maybe we, for the first time, get to have this approach to health and wellness because we have the information and the resources.
I was going to say it's both, yeah.
Yeah, probably before we had traditional medicine, we didn't have the resources. Like you couldn't.
I mean, healthcare now is better, right? I mean, we save lives and we are smarter. But I think we're also recognizing that there are some preventative actions we can take so we don't need those life-saving measures. Right. So I think that we're becoming smarter by simplifying our approach.
Yeah. Yeah. And then we get to execute on that. Like I was just kind of speculating that maybe, however many hundreds of years ago it was easier or better, but they didn't have fruits and, easy fruits and vegetables and the elliptical machine and stuff like that.
I'm pretty happy with where we are.
Yeah, as am I.
So
drinking my electrolytes while we're podcasting,
yeah.
It's pretty good. It's a pretty good life. Yeah. Tell me more about just kind of like your role and I can sense this passion from you, and I just want to hear what's your favorite part about your job? What's your favorite part about running your practice?
Oh man, all of it. I mean, I got into medicine to help people. And every provider that I know got into medicine to help people. But I'm actually blessed in the way that I get to practice.
Yeah.
Because now I'm actually changing lives.
You get to actually help people.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
those that are willing to help themselves.
Right. With the caveat. Yeah. Which you'll learn about in your interview. No,
yeah.
I'm just kidding. But is it too far of a jump to say then it also on a long-term basis, like actually make fundamental changes with people that last forever? I mean, not for, but
No, absolutely. So every individual that I've had the pleasure of working with, like I mentioned earlier, they have not gone back. This is not a trend. What I do is not a trend. It's literally a lifestyle change that becomes a part of your culture. It becomes a part of you because you open that dialogue again to learn how to live and feel better. Like that moment that you realized, oh, I don't feel right. People will have the tool. Now you have the tools to fix it. You'll know exactly what algorithm to follow, how to reset your immune system, how to get your body balanced again. And you have this power to be in control. So I think that I joked one day with Phil, and I was like, I am literally working myself out of a job because I'm making everybody healthy. But at the same time, we all deserve to be healthy.
Yeah.
So I love what I get to do. I love the people I get to work with. Some cases are more challenging than others, but that just brings so much more success and reward to what we do when we get them there.
And maybe the best way to word this question is like, if you could address misconceptions or things like that, because what I'm curious about is why the heck is this not more popular?
Because it's hard.
Because it requires work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not going to lie. What we ask of people is a true commitment to themselves. And I'll be the first to say that I commit a lot of my time to other people, to my children, to my husband, to my patients, to my practice, to my business, all of it. But I have the tools and foundation to know how to maintain my health.
Right.
But we're all guilty of it.
You're not perfect?
No. No.
Come on. I thought you had like the recipe and the cheat sheet.
No, I still have plastic containers in my house.
Don't put them in the microwave.
No.
But
No.
You think that really is it? Is that it's hard? That's the only reason why it's not more mainstream and more popular and not more, common practice?
Maybe it's hard and a lot of us don't believe that we're worth it. We don't want to invest in ourselves.
Mm.
there's a lot of emotional buy-in that I have to help people understand that they're worth it.
Is that emotional buy-in the biggest barrier? Like, when
For sure.
we've talked about those different components and how I think, and I really do believe that our brains are immensely powerful. Like, I actually believe we can change our reality with our minds. It's the best and the worst thing in the world. I'm curious, because to oversimplify it, but the mind, the body, the nutrition, kind of like those three components of it. Is the mind, in your experience, been the biggest barrier and the most impactful, or do they all carry equal weight?
They're all connected, right? Because usually when someone is suffering from chronic pain, that's leading to chronic depression. And when they're in a chronic state of depression, it's exasperating their chronic pain.
Right. Yeah, right? Now you can't move. Now you don't move as much.
Yeah.
I'm fascinated. That's been one of the things. So I told you off camera, I think this is my 73rd podcast conversation. One of the things that I'm most fascinated with about people has been individuals that have been able to pull themselves from a dark place, like actually overcome a low, a true low. Because I don't know that we fully comprehend just how challenging that is because you're in a low. Like, I'm trying to figure out how to articulate it better. I haven't nailed it yet, but it's like, I think one of the most remarkable things that human beings can do is when you're, I've had family members that, been on the brink of suicide and battling addiction, and, like low lows. And to be able to pull yourself out of that, I think is remarkable because, it's one thing to have a good day and then have another good day.
Yeah.
Whole nother thing to have years of bad days.
Yeah.
And turn them into, slowly turn it into it. I'm fascinated with that.
The human spirit is resilient by nature. It really is. And what I hope to do when I meet with people is let them tap into that strength again and be in control, regardless of what level of low is, because everyone has different thresholds, different levels of stress response. But the stress response is the same in terms of inflammatory triggers and leading to cellular malfunction and then disease presentation. But everyone has a ability to move beyond it when they're ready. A lot of your family members, right, had to get to a place when they were ready. Right. So the human spirit is resilient. And there are so many people who persevere through so many things, but they don't recognize the emotional effect on our physical.
Yeah. Tell me more about that. I won't be able to quote you exactly, but you just said something that stood out to me of that basically that everybody is capable of, that theme of resiliency. Do you believe that, and I don't know if genetics come into play or whatever, but that literally everyone is capable of a healthy, happy life?
Yes. I know that's a bold statement, but yes, I do. Again, it comes down to the willingness and the readiness. But regardless of who you are and where you are, the human body wants to be healthy. It wants to be able to overcome and move and heal and do all the things that it's meant to do. I mean, it doesn't matter. I mean, that's why the really great thing that I do is that I can see people across all spectrums of age and disease processes and gender, and the body, regardless, will heal itself. And every person that I've worked with continues to get healthier.
Yeah.
So I've worked with some of the people that I've graduated with me from 2011 are healthier now than they were when they graduated, when they were in the height of learning and practicing. And it's amazing because the more that we continue to live this lifestyle of balance, of reversing cellular inflammation and calming our autoimmune response and keeping our hormones working and all of these components of health, the healthier you get. The stronger your immune system is, the more resilient you are mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, all of those things.
Yeah.
So
it's the coolest thing in the world. I'm curious, and because my wife will tell me that for sure the answer is yes, but I'm curious your thoughts on it. That idea that, our brains and our bodies, our minds and our bodies are connected, like it all happen. can you work on one too much? And I'm curious, we were joking earlier about me, running my 100-miler and, the impact that had on my body. I'll tell you all day that the benefits to my mind are way worth, the potential of maybe overdoing it, for the body. But I'm just kind of curious, genuinely, actually, I'm curious if there are extremes there, or if you can do one thing too much, and if I don't know if there can cause more harm than good.
Yes.
And I'm gonna keep running 100-milers no matter what the response is. But it's
then you have to offset that inflammatory response and breakdown, right? So you can.
You mean I have to rest?
You do. Yeah. And you have to give your body the nutrition it needs in order to heal itself and all aspects. But yes, you can go to the extreme, right? I mean, we all know those extreme biohackers. I meet them all the time and I'm like, you know way more than I do and you do a lot more than I do, but you are at this extreme level where it's creating more stress. Right. It's creating more inflammation. It's creating more. That's why you're here to see me, because clearly you've overdone it. Yeah. And then we're on the other extreme where we don't do anything, and all we do is focus on the mental part without working on the physical part. Yeah. So you can lean one way or the other too extremely.
I'll edit that out.
Yeah. Just like our car is a perfect wheel on it, right? We don't have little divots in it.
Right.
Our life needs to be balanced in that way. Yeah. Our health needs to be balanced in that way.
Yeah. So, which brings me to, because you have these, I believe they're called like personal health plans or programs, personal health programs. I avoided the W word.
Yeah, no, thank you.
It was hard, but I did. Tell me about that and how they work, and how that, if somebody's interested in kind of like, looking at this whole concept and this idea of feeling better and, living a better life and things like that, and these personal health programs, and, I know that there's the different factors in that and stuff, but I just want to hear kind of about how they work and why.
So if someone is interested, then they should come to a talk, which the ads will be out. Yes. And the dates and times. But when the reason why I host the talk is I want people to understand who I am and what I do. And then most importantly, the outcomes that we're getting, right? Because it's better to see what we are capable of. You said it perfectly. The mind is powerful. And I truly believe that if our mind can think it, our body will achieve it. Right. So if we say, just like when you were going across that line, right, at the 100-mile part, you were like, I'm crossing that line, and your body was trudging you there. And there you go.
Yeah.
You did it.
Powerful
but
mind.
Yes. So, when someone comes in and they decide to do a personalized health program with us, we address all aspects of their health. We look at their emotional health. So we have a psychologist that takes them through that process, and it's an individual journey. Then we have the nutritional component. So we take them through eating real food, right? That is delicious and yummy and enjoyable, and that you make at home. And then taking them through the movement portion of it, taking them through the medical portion, the hormones, the cellular, physiological balancing. It's just, and then getting their body to function properly, detoxifying. Yeah. So I don't know if I answered that properly.
So that's what I think is interesting, because I don't want to be like, this isn't like a plug or a pitch or anything, but sincerely, I think there's a lot of people that are sort of looking for answers, right? And like, we're doing parts of it, we're seeing the counselor, or, doing the online training plan, or, Googling about our food, and we could have a whole podcast on diet, I'm sure. But, there's an approach, I guess, that takes in all of those components. So with a personalized health plan, how did you call it? Personalized health plan?
Yeah, okay. It does.
Yeah, with personalized program, you use program. That's what I was call it. That you guys are helping address like the mental side of it through the psychologist, the physical health side of it through a personal trainer. I
think what you said earlier, sorry for interrupting, but you said that a lot of these people are doing the work individually. They're going and seeing on individual aspects.
Right. That's what I'm curious about.
Yeah. And so what we do is we bring it all together into one place where the team focuses on you. where a lot of these places, like your personal trainer is not talking to your psychologist,
Right.
and your psychologist isn't talking to your medical provider. Where when someone comes in and works with us, we literally work as a team on that one person, and we collaborate, and it's in that individual is a part of the collaboration. They are in control, but we are there to support. So there's an open dialogue that helps these people really achieve the goals and outcomes that they're looking for, because the team is focused on them instead of being compartmentalized.
Right.
Our health isn't compartmentalized. Our body's not compartmentalized, right? Our heart is feeding into our lungs, into our, you know what I mean? Like, so our health should be approached the same way. Our mental health should be in connection with our physical health, and our physical health should be connected with our physiological health, and so forth.
Yeah.
So I think that's really the difference, is that we bring it all together. And I think, and this is a bold statement, but that's how medicine should be.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, if we were able to practice medicine in a way to where we had a team of people that were addressing all aspects of the individual, we would have no
Could
more
you
disease
imagine?
process, right? We have no more hypertension, no more high cholesterol. Like, dementia would be on the decline. Like, we would all be healthier.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's why I'm like, why is it not more popular?
It's a good question.
You think it's the work? Do you think it's the insurance industry? Do you think it's big pharma? I mean, I'm genuinely curious, why this model isn't more popular, because as we're talking it through, it's like such a no-brainer. Granted, I know there's barriers to like getting it done. You have to do the work, you have to pay. I mean, I know that, I understand that like there's some life that happens, but conceptually it's like, of course.
Yeah. There's a quote that I use in my stress hormone and health talk, and it's a quote from the Medicare Journal, and it says, "Care that seeks to promote health, promote and enhance the quality of life is not considered medically necessary and therefore not payable." So what are they paying for? Pills, procedures, right? The things that we don't want.
Right.
So we're stuck in a system that is designed to keep us sick. And so it's hard for people to get out of the system, because we've all been taught.
Oh, yeah.
Even myself, when I was going through school, like I was literally taught an algorithm to determine the disease process, to then determine what medication to put the person on. And that's literally our board questions, right? Like it's an algorithm of healthcare that is leading to continual disease and continual management, to where it's hard to break free from that, because providers won't get paid, and patients can't use their insurance, right, to go in for their ailments. It's a system that keeps feeding into itself.
Right.
Without getting too political about it. So.
Don't get me started on no, I'm kidding. But it's just fascinating to me, because it's almost like if I don't know, if people had more insight or awareness, and even you had mentioned early on in our conversation that even practitioners, likely want to. I mean, if you're in the medical field, you want to help people. I mean, that's a safe assumption, I think. Nobody's like being malicious or anything like that. Everybody's genuinely doing the best that they know how. So I'm wondering if you think, like, from a big picture, if systematic change is ever possible, or that people need to take more control of their own health. Maybe that's the more short-term answer.
I think the change will come from the individual.
Yeah.
I think that's where, and the more people who realize that they have control and that they have control of their health, the more that things are going to start to change.
Right.
But we have to be the change that we want to see for ourselves. And so that's why I do the emotional connection, because if there is no emotional connection, there is no change.
Yeah. Yeah.
One of the stories that I shared with, we had some friends over for dinner, and they were like, "Well, why did you change your practice? Why did you do that?" And I said, "Well, honestly, I'm going to make a joke of this, but after day sitting down with someone and them saying to me, just change my med and give me another pill to treat my diabetes, because the pill you gave me didn't work."
Right.
And then I asked them, "Well, why didn't the pill that I gave you work? Why didn't that medication work? What are you eating?" "Oh, well, I have my Monsters and my Snickers and my this and every day." And I'm like, well, it's not the pill that's not working. It's what you're eating that's leading to the sugars being elevated. And I recognized at that moment that there was no pill I could prescribe There was nothing I could do that would change that individual or change their health outcomes. I had to approach it from a different aspect.
Yeah.
I had to put them in control and have them understand the meaning behind what they're doing.
So this whole shift came from, I don't know if frustration is the right word, but that you were actually feeling like you weren't making a big enough impact? Like you were, I don't know if handcuffed but like you were, I'm envisioning this, I'm seeing you in the room, like genuinely trying to help. You're limited to, the prescription pad of paper and the 45 minutes or whatever.
Yeah.
Is that kind of like what the catalyst was?
A combination, maybe. It came from my own health journey, and then from there, recognized I've always been passionate about how to heal people on a cellular level. I've always been interested in autoimmune response and allowing the body to heal from the inside out, and I wasn't able to practice that, because I had to follow these algorithms. And then the more that I was stuck in the algorithms and recognizing in the back of my mind that there was a better way, another way, was what kind of made me just change completely. And
did you know that other way, or you just knew that there was, were you aware of this approach to medicine and kind of, I don't know, this practice, this model, or did you explore it? Were you kind of like, there's got to be another?
I explored it. And I tried it on myself.
Did you?
Yeah. So I've always been interested in how the body works. And from that aspect, even when I was taking my courses, I was always interested in how the medication affect the cell, right? What receptors it was going to and how it was changing the body. And I've always looked at the body from the inside out. And that curiosity is really what's drove my practice. And then through my own life's journey and seeing the not improvement in individuals, and then feeling like I was not helping, I was contributing to the problem, really made me decide to change, jump both feet in.
So when did you get serious about your health journey?
You want me to share that?
Yes.
So I have an autoimmune disease. And autoimmune meaning I've had it my entire life. And we didn't know when I was younger, right? It was just, I managed with the symptoms. I just kind of pushed through. I persevered, right? I just kind of lived with it and thought this was my body and how it was going to be. And it wasn't until I was in my early 20s that I was in graduate school full-time and I was working full-time because I was paying for graduate school, right? I was burning the candle at both ends, that my autoimmune response just kicked in big time, to the point where my hair was falling out in handfuls. I had cystic acne scarring on my face. I was underweight with a distended abdomen that hurt all the time. It didn't matter what I ate, didn't eat, and I was juicing and I was eating healthy and I was doing all these things that, that was considered the approach to a natural, holistic, clean lifestyle. And I was dying from the inside out. I had little red bumps on my joints that anytime the shower was wrong temperature or my shirt hit it would send pain to my spine.
Jeez.
And I'd curl up in the fetal position and want to cry, and it was awful. So I saw all the specialists, right, because I was in the field of taking care of myself, and they didn't have any answers for me. And it was either take this medication or, good luck kind of thing. And it was out of desperation one night, and I'll share more about it. Actually, I'll share it now. So I was rounding with a really brilliant endocrinologist at that time. And whenever I showed up, it was at a hospital setting. It was when I lived in Alaska, and I went to the hospital setting, and she gave me my patient list for the day. And she's like, here's your patients you need to go around on, and then you're going to come back and see me. But before you come back tomorrow morning, I want you to write a 3-page paper on why individuals end up with type 1 diabetes later in life. Now, this was back in the day when that didn't exist. Okay, there was either type 1, you were born with it, or type 2, you made poor lifestyle decisions and ended up with it. So I was like, great, my health is failing and she's making up diseases. I am not living my purpose. This is not where I'm supposed to be. But I have a feisty spirit to me, so I wasn't going to go down without a fight. So I decided that I was going to find something and read all of the research articles that I could on type 1 diabetes later in life. So I went to the university library because there was no Dr. Google. right? And I read every article there was on type 1 diabetes later in life. And I'm joking because there was absolutely no articles on it whatsoever. I read every article there was, but there was none on type 1 later in life. So I went home and I was like, okay, I'm just going to make up the best paper she has ever read, right? And as I'm like making up this paper, I'm like flipping through my book, pathophysiology book, and one sentence stood out. And it said, individuals who are lactose intolerant are more likely to end up with type 1 diabetes later in life. I'm going to rephrase that. Individuals who have a known inflammatory trigger are more likely to end up with a disease later in life. So that was my aha moment. I realized I didn't have to be sick. I just had to figure out what was triggering my inflammatory response, my autoimmune response. So I immediately dove into cellular health, immune health, liver health, you name it, I tried it, right? And within 4 months, I reversed myself of my autoimmune presentation. I still have my autoimmune disease, right? But I reversed my presentation. And I simply have taken that algorithm, that practice and understanding of the physiological response in our body and have applied it to my medical practice. So through my illness, I found my purpose.
Right.
So there you go.
Wild. And now you've impacted who knows how many people and, you know, all of these changes. Like that's what I think is one of the coolest things about the world that you're getting to live in and the work that you're getting to do is the ripple effects. I mean, like I wonder if you've ever like reflected or thought about that too. Like, you know, you make a father happy and healthy, how that impacts his kids.
Totally.
Their kids. And, you know, and that's why I'm just eating this up and want to put a megaphone in front of it is because like it's not, I mean, you know, we've made some bold statements in this conversation, like curing cancer and, you know, reversing disease and whatever, but I actually think you can change the world. Like actually, if people are their healthiest and their happiest and living their best life, I mean, you talk about like, you know, one of my goals is to make sure my kids have less traumas than I had, you know, and we joke at the house that, you know, I'll just give them all new traumas, you know, I'll mess them up in a whole new way, but at least it won't be the same way that I was met. But, you know, very sincerely, like you think about how massively impactful societal change can be if people are happy and healthy and functioning at their best. I mean, I gotta imagine that that's just the coolest.
We'd be far more productive with less amount of work effort needed, right? We'd be happier. We'd have, I mean, there's just so much that can come that we personally experience from good health that as a society, we would thrive from.
I was just, you used the word I was going to, thriving. We could thrive.
Yeah.
It's so cool to think. And that's what's fascinating, you know, and we'll kind of wrap, but I think that there's kind of, I don't know, that in modern society now, there's sort of like two groups. I think simultaneously, here's what I'm trying to say. I think simultaneously people are the healthiest they've ever been and the least healthiest that we've ever been. You know, different groups, not individuals. But it's so cool to know though that you can go from this incredibly unhealthy and thrive no matter how late you are in life or, you know, how bad it's gotten or whatever it might be, that like it's possible. If it's, I don't know, it gives me hope. It fills me up. I think it's the coolest thing.
It is. It's exciting. I hope that more people are willing to take that leap of faith in themselves and put the investment in themselves because we're worth it.
Yeah. Yes, we are. Tabitha, thank you so much for so many different things. One, thanks for driving through the fog advisory that we had today to come and podcast. Thanks for giving me some of your time. I know how valuable that is. But thanks also for sharing, you know, your insight and your wisdom and your perspective and all of that stuff. But larger than that, I want to thank you for having the courage to take your own health under your control. And, you know, the fact that you're able to use that as a catalyst now to make these huge impacts that you're making. I hope you get told it enough, or if not, I'm going to tell you, like, the world needs more of this. They need more of your energy. They need more of your perspective and your insights, and it's refreshing. And I hope you know how much I appreciate that I really do think that we're all better when you know, people are the healthiest and happiest that they can be. And I hope that you are busier than you can handle. And I hope there's lots of people doing what you do eventually, and that, you know, that this whole thing grows and gets traction, and that that I can age gracefully and that my kids can't, it's just amazing. So I very sincerely want to thank you for that, because I don't know that you ever get a chance. You and I are kind of wired similarly, we're go-getters and kind of, hard charging. But if you ever get a chance, or I hope you make yourself the chance to, be able to take a breath and like look at the impacts that you're making and how you're able to really, benefit people's lives and their lifestyles and their livelihoods and families and all of that stuff. So thank you. So
thank you.
I have a gift for you. They're my Inspire by Example shirts.
Oh, thank you.
Because you are inspiring by example. And that's what's also cool about your story is that, obviously I know you do this, this is how you make a living. I get it, right? Let's go see Alpine Medical.
I would give it for free, but I have to pay everybody else.
We have bills to pay.
Yeah.
But also you lived it first. And I think that that's worth something. It's not just somebody who like read some books and, started saying, hey, here's the method. And I just sense from you, there's that passion, there's the fact that you've lived it, and that there's that willingness to continually evolve and like have the new perspectives and stuff. It's inspiring. So thank you. I appreciate it so much. This has been great.
Thank you. Thank you for making this not painful. I was super nervous. You know that.
You did awesome. You did great. Thank you.